FreeMMOStation.com.
It's absolutely that time of the year again. That completely random occasion when we decide that the time has come to update the list of our favorite free-to-play MMORPGs. Honestly, it's a bit of a pain, but to be honest as well, it's also very rewarding to see when you guys actually agree with our choices. Even if you don't agree, it's still pretty cool to hear your opinions and reply to you with very personal, unique comments. That'll make us bond and become maybe best friends forever. Probably. Well, perhaps not all of that, but I digress. Games, guys. That's what we're here for. So, here's the countdown of our top 10 free-to-play MMORPGs of 2014.
Number 10.
At the moment, DC Universe Online is the best superhero MMORPG, and while the competition is trying different approaches, such as, loot-driven, clicky Marvel heroes, this is our definite pick. If you really want to feel like a superhero, running at super speed, or flying like you never did before, this is your game. It's very smooth to handle, the character creation is probably one of the most in-depth that we've ever experienced, and combat is big and very enjoyable part of the adventure. Featuring a hybrid system, it requires quite a bit of skill and attention, and while it can get a little bit button mashy, it's still tremendously fun in PvP. We wouldn't say that DC Universe Online is a very deep MMO, but it's still extremely enjoyable, and it makes for a perfect entry point for those who are trying their first MMO.
Number 9.
It's pretty difficult to find a game with richer lore than Lord of the Rings Online. This is, pretty much after all, the fantasy world that inspired many other fantasy worlds themselves, with characters that everyone is familiar with, even if they don't really know what all the fuss is about. Lord of the Rings Online launched over 7 years ago and turned free-to-play in 2010, with huge success up to this day. It's a very deep game, and while it's clearly inspired by the gigantic world of Warcraft, it remains immensely enjoyable just to follow the story and meet some of our beloved characters. If you enjoy the game, then you're probably going to want to get a monthly subscription, since that's going to give you very useful options, such as lifting the currency cap and such, and access to more content.
Number 8.
It seems that Ion is getting a bit of a rough time with bot mania. It pretty much infects most MMO games. But if you happen to be immune to that, you'll still be able to enjoy a very pretty and addictive MMORPG. Not only does it feature one of the most incredibly awesome character creation systems ever, it's also one of the few games with decent aerial combat. In fact, something about the upcoming Chinese game Revelation reminds us of Ion, so keep an eye out for that one too. Anyways, Ion looks good even after quite a few years, has some large-scale battles that will drive you crazy, and a huge world that's going to keep you running and flying around for quite some time. Still, totally deserves our attention. But let's see if next year it remains as one of our favorites.
Number 7.
So guys, you never really expected Neverwinter to be like this open world, sandboxy, kind of badass MMORPG similar to, say, ArcAge, right? Well, because that's not what it is. It's something actually totally different. What we have here is a very fun and addictive MMORPG with fast-paced combat and pretty much no bullshit, straight-to-the-point gameplay. The PvP is extremely fun and feels, for the most part, right. Neverwinter can easily entertain you for a really long time, especially if you decide to stick with the Foundry system. Then you have virtually an infinite number of adventures to play. You'll easily be able to pick the best experience thanks to the rating system, so it's doubtful that you're going to be playing some stupid, stinky creation. This is one for fans of Dungeons & Dragons, of course, but it's also for players who just love fun, accessible MMO adventures, as long as you're not expecting the most in-depth of mechanics.
Number 6.
Dragon Nest is plain and simply still one of the best action MMORPGs available. That's it. Don't judge it by its cute anime looks, guys. This is absolutely one for the most resilient and skilled players. Combat is unique and diverse, especially depending on the character you pick and how skilled you are in this kind of game. The combat mechanics make for a really fast-paced and really fun PvP experience, which is a very valid way of changing from the enticing main adventure, dungeons, and awesome bosses. If we wanted to compare Dragon Nest to any other action MMORPG, then it would most certainly be the sister title Vindictus, which is going to bring us to...
Number 5.
Vindictus, the sexy, gorgeous, Source Engine-powered action MMORPG from Nexon. This is a game that is standing the test of time, and besides the great graphics, it's hands down one of the most exciting action combat systems ever seen in MMOs. The way you can use plenty of objects to bash enemies really never gets old, and we wish more games had such a versatile combat system as this one, where your skill and the way you time dodges actively matter on the outcome of the fights. Despite some outcries, Vindictus really isn't a pay-to-win game. We would say it's more of a pay to get some sexy costumes for your female avatar kind of game, if you're into that sort of thing. Now, we're just waiting on the new character Arisha to be added to the North American and European versions.
Number 4.
MMORPG or not MMORPG? Honestly, we don't care. Path of Exile deserves to be on this list as much as any other game, so we're just gonna stick to the facts. This isometric online action RPG is the closest thing that you're gonna ever get to a free Diablo game. The classes are extremely varied, and you're able to come up with some truly different and crazy builds that show just how diverse the gameplay can get. Thanks to its awesome skill tree, which we kindly like to call the what the fuck skill tree. It's very in-depth, even for an RPG, and it gets plenty of support from its developers, and it can suck entire months of your life if you don't pay attention, guys. It looks really good, plays even better, and there's this great feeling of immersion in the game, especially because of the voice acting. But best of all, it's one of the best examples of how to make a proper free-to-play game. You will never feel like you're trying to reach into your wallet. But do support this game and the developers. They truly deserve it for making one AAA game that you can play for free. Really.
Number 3.
Oh boy, where should we really begin with this one? ArcheAge was a highly anticipated sandbox MMORPG, and while it had a bit of a rough start in Korea, nobody was expecting such a mess during the Western launch. Trion Worlds was widely considered the best publisher possibly for this game, but that didn't stop ArcheAge from having a extremely chaotic launch. From queues that would reach 9 hours to several bugs and even DDoS attacks. It was far from the smoothest launch that we've ever seen. ArcheAge is slowly finding its feet with new servers and fixes, so we're pretty sure in a few months the game will be playable as intended. And it is quite a terrific game. It's pure sandbox, so you're gonna have a lot of fun with it, like you're living a full life of possibilities. One time you could be attending your crops, and the next you're on the high seas trying not to get your ship destroyed by that kraken. If you're stuck in some part, then go find something else to do. It's far from perfect and sometimes honestly a bit broken, but that's the price you pay for all the things you get to do. Combat is slightly shallow, but it's not really the focus of the game, guys. You should play ArcheAge to enjoy its world. All the things you get to see and do, not to nitpick on its little flaws. It's also far from your average pay-to-win MMO. Sure, those labor points can be a pain in the butt. Free players have a harder time getting them. If you're playing ArcheAge as a racing simulator, then you're doing it wrong. Explore it, take your time, find new locations and stuff to do, and appreciate the game. Then you can spend some real money and thank the devs. ArcheAge is a flawed masterpiece, and while we're pretty sure it will remain so, it's still a very inspiring game.
Number 2.
Rift is the second game from Trion Worlds in our top this year, and it's already featured last year. It honestly deserves so, since it's probably the most published MMORPG ever at launch. Quite the opposite of ArcheAge, but we're talking about two very different games. Rift is rock solid, looks great, and has a good deal of depth to the skill system. The dynamic world events bring some diversity to the gameplay, although they're not overly dynamic. It's pretty evident that Rift launched at a time when everybody was trying to make their own World of Warcraft killer, and while we all know how that story turned out, hell, even Blizzard's own WoW killer Project Titan just got killed, Rift is a damn fine MMORPG. Easily accessible and rewarding, with a mostly fair free-to-play model that doesn't get in your face and plenty of content to go through. This is still one of the best free MMOs out there. If you can get past the generic fantasy universe and the somewhat bland storyline, this is a must-play.
And number 1.
Terra Rising is still our favorite MMORPG of the bunch. Probably until Black Desert Online launches in the West, or who knows really, Blade and Soul. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, and in the case of Blade and Soul, probably just fooling ourselves. Anyway, Terra isn't perfect, but it's the best example of true action combat in MMORPGs. The graphics, damn fine, and while the quests are somewhat repetitive, the great gameplay in PvP pretty much makes up for that. Grouping to take down BAMs is still a great thing, and this year also saw the introduction of the new Reaper class, as well as more content for everyone's pleasure. Terra keeps going strong, real strong, and there's plenty more to come. Possibly by the end of 2014 or early 2015 with the launch of the new continent, with 5 new endgame dungeons, and increased level cap and more content. Stuff to really be excited about. And so here it is, our highly anticipated top 10 free-to-play MMORPGs for 2014. quite a bunch of awesome and diverse games, and both were fans of action combat or the most classic tab-targeted combat. We had, obviously, to leave some other good games out of the equation, and it wasn't really an easy decision. So we want to recommend you also try out C9, Star Wars The Old Republic, Swordsman Online, or Elswords Online, for example. Any other awesome MMORPGs that you guys can think of? What changes would you make to our ranking? Please let us know in the comments below.
Still not sick and tired of all the MOBAs yet? Good for you, because the developers of Heroes of New Earth has just announced another one, Strike. This is another free-to-play MOBA, and the studio expects the two games to compete between